Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Kaiwyn titled The Cut After the First. And if we switch over to here we have ourselves the track on the screen. On YouTube we're going to listen through it from start to finish and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go! Oh, bright guitars to start us off.
I was a teenage love fool when I declared my love to you. You were with him.
Nice use of banjo too.
And then after a week or two, you came to me with tears and you want to be with me.
A little bit of crispiness to the voice.
And after a while I don't know when you disappeared and my friend said you're back with him. Yeah, the cut after the first. Oh, why does it hurt when they say the first cut is supposed to be the deepest? There is no reverse. Oh, the way that it burns. Well, I think the cut after the first, the cut after the first is deeper.
I think it's a really charming track. Really full on the mid to upper register there with a nice polish in the low end. It's just, it's very sweet. Really compelling harmonies with the strings as well.
To hide away from you, but parts of you remain with me. This godforsaken curse. Somehow one day I saw you too. My heart just sank, and how could you turn and walk away? I thought it wouldn't faze me. I thought that I had moved on too, but I stood there. The world was blue. Yeah, the cut after the first. Oh, why is it the worst when they say the first cut is supposed to be the deepest? The point of no return. Oh, you seemed unconcerned. Don't you know the cut after the first, the cut after the first is deeper? Is it
Good use of an interlude here.
or just you? Why have you reopened my wounds when I thought that you cared for me? Oh, the cut after the first. Yeah, the cut after the first. When they said the first cut was supposed to be the deepest.
Nice change in representation of the vocals with a reverb take. It does change things up and make the listener wonder what's going to happen next.
Now I realize, oh, it's just too late for me to learn that the cut after the first, the cut after the first is deeper. And the story ends, you abandon me, let me here alone with my fantasy. Gradually, the wood heal, and I forget you.
Charming! No, this is really pleasant. Cut After the First, or The Cut After the First by Kaiwyn. No, I think this is an exemplary single. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Kaiwyn titled The Cut After the First. Now, I should note that I have reviewed a track previously from Kaiwyn titled You're My Kind, and I enjoyed my time with that track. It was a really stellar track, and it's great to hear more of a similar quality. The story that we've got here is interesting because it's a slightly different take on a lot of these similar veins of sort of tragedy we have where we have someone that we're in love with, and there was someone else, and they came to us, and we thought, oh, we're in the clear, things are going to work out. But then eventually they go back to that other person because they realize that maybe they made a mistake, or maybe that's not what they wanted, etc. Because relationships and people are difficult like that. People never know what they really want at the best of times. So I think that it's a story that a lot of people will be able to sort of remain familiar with in a way that is thought-provoking and ultimately just hashtag relatable, I suppose, not to be too basic about it. I think that doesn't take away from the authenticity of the performance, though. Kaiwyn's vocals are fantastic. I like the control of the head and chest voice. They were very comfortable in their mid to upper register, which was a nice compliment to the guitars, the banjos, the strings, etc., all fluttering and fluctuating around that similar part of the frequency spectrum. And we had variations of the way we approached some of the sort of verse and chorus parts and the interlude there, similar range, but I think there was some backing vocals as well in some of the build parts or something like that, or the bridge sections where kind of like, we had those kind of tones there, the kind of fluffiness that contrasted well with the more sort of straightforward takes we did with the other parts of the song. Ultimately, I think that the way we sung, it's not, we don't sound like we've been too destroyed by it, but you can tell there's some pain that we're working through in that performance. So in that sense, again, I think it is fairly believable and ultimately just a really satisfying listen given the situation there. It seems like, again, Kaiwyn is doing this as a way to sort of express themselves in a way that can show vulnerability, and I think that that's a way of getting to know an artist better, and I'm thankful that we had the opportunity to do so. The track at 4 minutes 11 was great. I'm really stoked with the way that they handled it. I think that the mixture of the different verse and chorus structures with the bridges, but I think there was like a verse, bridge, chorus. It was like nice to have smoothness in the transitions between the various parts there. We had plenty of room as well for the various sort of string instruments like the guitars, the banjos, like the violins or whatever we had going on, maybe a quartet. Although we didn't have as much around the low end. Basically, we had basses and drums as well. I think that's all we really needed within this. There was a lot of mistiness, like we were sort of looking back at things in retrospect, like we were working things over in our own head, almost like it was kind of a sort of a fantasy that we were kind of letting go of. As at the same time, I think we talked about how we were kind of that fantasy had walked away and we'd been abandoned. At the same time, I don't want to sort of talk too much about the theme now. But it doesn't go too much into the sort of like kind of, tracks like this with these themes can get really sort of overwhelming with the negativity. And I think we had a nice sort of equilibrium and sense of balance with that instrumentally and harmonically. With the guitars, the way they were strummed, they were a fantastic foil to what was going on with the banjos. We had relatively accessible, not minimalist. We had a nice exploration of the various triads and shapes we had. There were some interesting harmonies and arpeggios going on there. We had them nicely placed in the stereo field, one on the left, one on the right, which is testament just as much to the arrangement as it is the post-production, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I think that the strings coming in later on is sort of like livening things up and adding a real sense of warmth and like romanticism to the entire experience was meaningful as well, going with whole notes to contrast with a lot of the more sort of 8th and 16th note parts that we had scattered throughout the track and piece. The bass guitar had plenty of room to fluctuate and move around in the low end, although it didn't overstep its boundaries and stayed well within the root notes and parts of the triads that were meaningful. And the drums that we had with some interesting fills there predominantly sat around the sort of the main sort of cymbal grooves, with kicks and snares being the focus. And we pocketed for the majority of the time in a way that was satisfying. It allowed the focal point to remain being the vocals in a way that was very palatable. And the combination of these elements, as well as just the way they were sort of arranged with there were no real alternative lead instruments aside from the vocals or the sing parts, which I think was a good move in this idea, because we needed time to tell the story. Even though this track was outside the 2 4 minute sweet spot, I don't think there was any filler. The theme itself sounded like we were looking back on things kindly, and we weren't upset at the person about it. We were just confused as to what the hell happened, you know. That may have been to sort of make it a bit more accessible to new fans and just kind of like open up the genre a little bit to not get too sort of like dark and sort of aggressive with it. But at the same thing, I also think that we've got a way of singing that is inherently kind of really pretty sounding. It's not like we're going to go for like a death metal cover for our next track or something like that, unless we've got that technique that we're not showing on the mic. Not that would be appropriate for this kind of song anyways, but we've got a nice awareness of how to approach the way we sing to match it to the tone and sound of the instruments there. Sort of innocence, a charm, a vibrance. It's very vibrant, it's charismatic, but yeah, ultimately the theme there's a bit of sadness, but ultimately it's just trying to accept what went on despite our feelings about it still being mixed because we're still in pain from it. It's an interesting, complicated tone which I think exemplifies what the story is discussing in the first place, and in that way it's effective. The studio recording, mixing and mastering, if I just take a quick look at something, I want to give a shout out to Simon Dobson at Lake House Audio, because they did a tremendous job of producing this track. They did a tremendous job. It was damn near flawless with the way the vocals, guitars, banjo, strings, drums and bass were done. It was nicely mixed and mastered and leveled. There were no weird resonant frequencies, and the frequency spectrum was nice and wide in the stereo field. It was commercial grade, and that's what you need for a single, and that's how you get a great first impression, except it's a second now because I've enjoyed my time with both of these songs, and just a really satisfying experience overall. We've got a musician here who has capacity to really have a career for themselves, so they continue to work in this direction and have the right people to collaborate with. And I think that the way we just sang really well with very little kind of like adjustment to the way the vocals sounded, we just got good vocal takes and captured those, and it was great to listen to, even though you did feel a little bit sympathetic for what they were going through. There was dynamic range to it. Things weren't squashed in terms of relative loudness between the loud and quiet bits. And it was still nice and loud without pumping though, so the bus compression and limiting were handled. And I'm sure there was a bit of added sort of reverb and sort of like flow and mistiness and kind of room sound to it. A bit of like a little bit of magic added in post-production, but it was subtle enough that it could have just simply been from like the elements arranged in the mix as well. But ultimately, this is my review of this track from Kaiwyn, titled The Cut After the First, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love by their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.